Hello, everyone, and welcome to your latest tactical show here on the Rangers Review Extra channel as we delve deeper into Sunday's 3-2 win at Parkhead against Celtic. And Joshua joins us. You can read the piece in detail over on the website, folks. If you are a subscriber, make sure you have subscribed. But we're bringing up the visuals on today's show. So, Joshua, how's it going?
Yeah, it's going fine, thank you, mate. I've done about 15 where did it go wrong for Rangers at Celtic Park articles over the past few years. So it was refreshing to kind of ponder where it went right. But I think quite a lot of these games in recent years have been pretty tight. You think back to the 3-2 game under Michael Beale, where Morelos had that goal ruled off by VAR when it shouldn't have been, or a number of those games at that period in time. There has been heavy defeats Rangers have suffered, but I feel like they fell on the right side of thin margins on Sunday. They very much dominated the first half. Celtic very much dominated the second half. But yeah, they got their rewards this time. And over the course, I think that was probably just about fair enough, given the opportunities they did create in the first half and the opportunities they created where they didn't actually get a shot away.
Yeah. Before we dive right in, just a quick word for our podcast sponsor, the Rangers Review, brought to you now by S1 Jobs. If it's time to hand in your transfer request, then head over to s1jobs.com and upload your CV today. With thousands of jobs across Glasgow, Edinburgh, and the surrounding areas, you'll find the one at S1 Jobs. So start your search today. Right, where shall we start? Let's start with the first goal, Joshua, an early goal from Rangers after they started well, positively on the front foot. Got themselves a corner and amazingly scored a run by Nico Raskin at the front post, glancing a header into the far corner. And how I've missed goals straight from corners. This was a great start for Rangers.
Yeah, well, I know you want to speak about corners because it was 2 corner goals in 3 games under Barry Ferguson. That's a tiny sample size. But obviously, famously or infamously, Rangers, it took them until December to score a set-piece goal this season under Clement. So yeah, I do think that, as we'll touch upon, not only the corner goal, but like the approach from set-pieces in general in the first half, if what Rangers did was they changed up their approach during a game. And how often have you watched, I think, a Rangers game earlier in the season? And I think set-pieces are at their worst when they're predictable. And for too much of the season, Rangers have been predictable, but they were anything but the weekend. So to start with the goal, Derek, people will obviously have seen it. I'll play it through as ever a couple of times and then just stop it at a couple of junctures that I think is important. Basically, Rangers, I think, exploited Celtic's man marking pretty well throughout the day. And it was quite a simple goal in many ways, their first set-piece goal, but it's made by 2 things. Firstly, if you look at the James Tavernier delivery, and that is, we often think about the finish with set pieces, but the delivery was just so good. And the leap of Nico Raskin. If you look, Derek, here, Rangers are kind of 4-on-4 against the Celtic defenders, and it's actually the Celtic back 4 there. And we know that Raskin's leap can be quite deceiving. Now, whether Rangers are trying to target him at the front post in order for him to get a flick on to then kind of score from a second phase at the back post, where you've got Balogun or Suter, and I think it's Cyril Dessers in there too. I guess you kind of have 2 opportunities from this type of set piece, but just very basic 2 things to kind of point out. Look at Václav Černý, and I think there's a Rangers player at the edge of the box, and they're really stretching out the Celtic defenders. You look at that gap between the 2 Celtic players next to Kasper Schmeichel and where the Rangers attackers are, and where Nico Raskin effectively has the space and the time to attack that ball. And because Celtic aren't defending zonally, and Rangers kind of set up in the structure all afternoon, they mixed up who was running where. And I think, again, just at a very basic level, that gave them an element of unpredictability that meant the Celtic defenders were constantly reacting to them as opposed to just defending their zone or knowing where certain runners were going. From there, it's really just a really good header from Nico Raskin. Diomande is kind of blocking Engels-ish on the line, maybe getting in Kasper Schmeichel's eye line there. You can see those 3 Rangers players at the back post who are kind of on hand if needed to get a flick on. But it was just, I think that goal is more than anything, more than any routine, Derek. That's just about a fantastic cross and a brilliant header for Raskin. We saw that a little bit before Barry Ferguson arrived, didn't we? goal against, was it, who was it? It was the Old Firm at the start of the year. He got the header from which Proper scored, wasn't it? And then when was the other header he scored? Was it USG?
Raskin, it was a ball from Taverner, remember? Cherny played him a sort of crappy pass and he bunged a cross over to the boards of the back post, and then he was there to...
I think it was USG, yeah. But anyway, the point is, so you take that goal and that's fine. I think Rangers are actually quite unfortunate to not score again from set pieces. What they've not had a lot this season is strong headers of the ball. But with Raskin and Balogun in particular, they do have... They were trying to isolate Balogun from the right-hand side. So Václav Černý took the first 2 corners from the Rangers' right-hand side as in-swingers. And then, interestingly enough, James Tavernier took the next 2. Now, you might say, so what? And it's not the most important detail in the world, but I think it's just descriptive, Derek, of the fact that they were kind of editing their set pieces in-game. And it kept Celtic guessing in a way that if you do the same thing continuously, they know what to expect. So this corner here, if I just play it through, is about 26 minutes. I play it through a couple of times and then again to discuss it. And Rangers actually have a really good chance here to make it 2-0. And if Diomande gets ahead of Engels defends the situation well. But if Diomande's maybe on his toes a little bit more, then he can get the back post flick on. But you can see here that what this approach attempts to do is isolate your strong header of the ball against a weaker header of the ball. So in an ideal world for Celtic, you maybe have Carter, Vickers or Naroki marking Balogun, but Nico Raskin and John Souttar are blocking those 2 players. Jeffrey Schlupp kind of doesn't really know what's happening. He's watching the ball, which allows Balogun to climb above him and get a really good header on the ball. It's maybe not quite goal bound, but again, then you see that, okay, from the second phase, can Rangers score? And again, I think this is an important detail that set piece coaches speak about stretching out teams from defensive set pieces. So if I go back, or if you cast your mind back to where Václav Černý was in that earlier example, trying to minimise the Celtic bodies in the box. And again, if you go back to the start of the season, I don't think Rangers set pieces had enough variety and different threats to them. Whereas Diomande probably pretty unlucky here to not score after a clever routine to get Balogun on the ball. And then we saw another routine, which was, I think, about 35 minutes into the game. Again, I'll just play this through. This is the final set piece example. So far you've had Raskin's made the front post run, Balogun's made the front post run. This time it's John Souttar. The Rangers players are bunched together. Again, that's not a new technique, but it's quite effective for a routine like this because it doesn't allow the Celtic players to get close contact. And if you look at what happens, it's Souttar makes the run to the front post. We've not got a close-up on this, but if I just pause it there, you can see that. I don't know if you can see that, Derek, but Balogun's effectively jumped on the back of Raskin. And Raskin, if you watch it back, is holding Carter Vickers, who can't get a jump up because of that, which again gives Balogun this uncontested header, and Naroki is free at the back. So it's not completely groundbreaking stuff, but I thought it looked a lot more effective, inventive, and there was a few different threats that Rangers carried from set pieces. And this header was straight at the goalkeeper, but I think on the day, Rangers set piece threat, in particular in that first half, was a lot more pronounced than it has been for large parts of the season.
Just shows you what a bit of work in the training pitch can do in games for me. How many videos were we on when Clement was a manager, just slagging off, for want of a better word, the set pieces and the lack of variety. It was clear for all to see that there wasn't enough variety in it. The Rangers coaching staff, the interim coaching staff, have been in a matter of just over a fortnight, I think now. And look what they're producing already. So, it was great to see, and long may it continue. I think variety is key with regards to corners. I do enjoy watching teams when they conduct corners that you can see it's right from the training ground. And it was fantastic. The Rangers got their just rewards on Sunday. There was a difference to Rangers' approach at Parkhead as opposed to previous trips there. Rangers haven't been victorious for quite some time, but they were aggressive. They were in the faces of Celtic, not allowing them time on the ball, and they didn't like that on Sunday. Out of possession, Joshua, could you see a big difference in this Rangers team performance?
Yeah, I mean, obviously Rangers did have a really good performance off the ball under Clement, kind of twice against Celtic. It took them a long time to move away from the really ineffective man marking all over the pitch. And if you think back to what Rangers tried to do at the start of the season when they lost 3-0, they had Proper, who's not an athletic defender, in the back line. They had they were locking on man for man right up in the opposition half. So that's one extreme. This was maybe the other. And the kind of 4-4-2 press off the ball did work well against Celtic at the start of the year. I think what Barry Ferguson and his team have done, they've come in with a fresh pair of eyes to the squad and said, you know what, what's the main thing it lacks at the moment? Wingers. You've got Václav Černý, but Černý wants to play inside the pitch more than he does by the touchline. Yeah. There's quite a lot of legs at fullback. We maybe need a bit more cover at centre half. We want to play three midfielders. And as we'll get onto with the goal, there is a benefit to playing with three midfielders. So I don't think it was a great performance on the ball. And the majority of Rangers' pressing moments, I've not got them to hand. But the majority of their scoring opportunities came from pressing moments. The goal is probably one rare example of where they were able to play through pressure. But even then, if you look at how Rangers got up the pitch, it was Ridvan pressing. It wasn't really playing through. And that is an ongoing thing. I think in particular with Jack Butland, Derek, that because he doesn't invite pressure very well, it makes it difficult to build up in games like this. However, I think Ferguson and his coaching staff have looked at that midfield three, they've looked at the wing backs, they've looked at playing someone close to Dessers and thought this is the best platform for big games. And what Rangers press did, I'll play through a couple of examples here, Derek, is it's called, I think Liverpool coach Pep Linders used to call it the first passes free press. So you can see here Dessers is kind of marshalling as that car to Vickers on the right, and the Rockies being watched by Černý, Diamandi on Engels, and no doubt that Callum McGregor was a miss for Celtic, but when was the last time Rangers went into an Old Firm without an injury crisis? Maybe this weekend is the strongest squad they've had for a long time in this fixture, so I don't think that's too much of an excuse. But basically, the free pass was normally one of the wing backs, sometimes one of the number 8s. But continually what Rangers allowed Celtic to do was they kind of baited them into these situations where Johnson is free when Kasper Schmeichel's got the ball here. But then Ridvan or Tavernier would jump up. And from there, you can see that Raskin is locking on to Luke McCowan. Dessers is marshalling Carter Vickers. Diamandi's on Engels. So there's no obvious passing options. And it allowed Rangers, rather than kind of being caught in behind and maybe starting too aggressively, they had that extra man across the back with their back five, and then they could jump up onto one of the wing backs. What Dessers did actually really effectively on the day is he is quite an intelligent presser. And often he split the pitch in half. So you can see here, straight back pass to Kasper Schmeichel, Dessers chases it down. Now in this example, Derek, I don't know if you can see that, but Celtic do have, and technically have, 2 free players on their right-hand side. But what Ferguson was clearly instructing his team to do was split the pitch in half with your press. That is to say, if Dessers runs from the angle he does, he prevents that pass out to the right-hand side. And then again, although Schmeichel has that free pass over to the left to play in Jeffrey Schlupp, that's when the wing-back jumps up and Rangers can go man for man on that side. So this is something that Michael Beale used to say about Rangers press. Remember the kind of 4-3-3 press under Gerrard, is he'd say that the right-back in this situation isn't in the game. If Schmeichel plays it, it's a risk, and by the time the ball gets there, you've got time to recover over. So it was effective off the ball when the team, when they were pressing Schmeichel. And obviously a number of moments, Václav Černy's chance in particular, came from that. Here's another example of Dessers closing down the Schmeichel. This time Schmeichel does play the pass to the right back, but guess what? By the time the ball reaches him, yes, it's a poor pass, but Rangers have had time to recover over kind of behind the ball because they've got that back five. This is how they get the ball into the final third for their goal. So the difficulty would be, difficulty I think they had on the day, as we'll touch on briefly, is when they fell into their back five and when they got pushed back, they didn't have enough of a route forward. And it was the pressing in the first half and towards actually the end of the game that gave them that territorial advantage. But if you look then, just before I throw it back to you, to Derek, where that goal comes from, Rangers goal, it's a really well worked goal, and it comes from Ridvan winning that throw-in by pressing high up the pitch. But again, this is what this system allowed. If you look, Nico Raskin is here deep in the pitch. In the space of, I think it's 8 seconds, he's attacking the box. And this is something that, again, I think Ferguson and his team have looked quite pragmatically at, like, what does this team have? They don't have an abundance of tools to break down defences. Like, you see the second goal that Celtic score when they have the wide rotation. Rangers have not been coached to do that. That's why they're not as effective. Not just that in particular, but that style of play, those automations, that's why they're not as effective against low blocks. But what they do have is they're better running into space. And I think Ferguson's looked at it pretty pragmatically and thought, for the games against Fenerbahce, remember how effective Diamandi and Raskin were breaking forwards.
Yeah.
They can do that because they've got Connor Barron, who covers a million miles behind them, and they've got three centre halves. This goal, I think, is made by Suter making a bit of a braver pass to Tavernier. We didn't see enough of this from players around him, but he cuts out a Celtic man and he goes through pressure. And the ball's really good from Tavernier. But again, because Celtic press up, Raskin can run beyond, and you can see that Rangers create a 4v3 against the Celtic backline. So it's quite a pragmatic tactic. And again, I think it speaks to the fact that they don't really have these solutions from wide areas to break defences down. But Raskin was probably the best player on the pitch for me on the day. You've seen the midfielder he can become. And there's still areas in his game he needs to improve. But he just has so many attributes. And I thought he really grabbed that game in the first half. And again, that's a surprise element. Engels doesn't see him, partly because he starts to move here. And about 6 seconds later, he's the one popping up in the box to assist that goal.
Yeah, the awareness from him, I love that goal. The little glancing header shows the relationship he and Mohamed Diamandi have at this moment in time, that he knows he's there. Just a little touch to his feet, and then he does the rest. But yeah, that was a super goal. I agree with you about Raskin. He's been sensational, well deserving of his call up to the Belgium squad. I hope he gets game time and comes back in one piece. Fantastic analysis there. Slight gripe though. Jack Butland's distribution. I think a Celtic goal came from a poor kick out. It's an area of his game. I mean, it made some top class saves, but distribution wise, it's not his strength, is it?
No. So I think second half, what Rangers probably got wrong, and I think maybe if you're being critical, there should have been a change earlier on. So they were getting pulled into this. I've not got this to hand, but they were getting pulled back. Their 5-3-2 was becoming a 5-4-1. So Cherney was getting dragged back into the midfield because Celtic play with those inverted fullbacks, so they have their three midfielders and they can create an extra man. So that's all fine and well if Cherney drops back in. However, that meant that there was no outball. And similarly to what you saw at home to Fenerbahce, Derek, because Dessers isn't a hold-up player, because he's not really going to turn in behind in these situations, he'll run in behind in the opposition half, but he's not a player who, he doesn't get you up the pitch, right? Does he? That's not his strength. No. So that basically meant that pressure couldn't be broken. This kick from Butland, really simple. The goal comes 30 seconds after it. The downside of this type of approach is that you think that clearing it is making you safer, is taking the ball away from goal. But there's that saying in football that the faster the ball goes forward, the faster it can come back. And this is what we saw under Clement a ton. Celtic scored about 20, 30 seconds after this attack. But if you look at the Rangers' defence, it just gets pushed back so quickly. They're in recovery mode. And it was just a pretty poor goal to concede all round. Yeah. So I think they do. That is an element of this side that just needs to improve. You need to be able to invite pressure to play through. Otherwise, you don't gain a foothold in the team whatsoever. Or you need someone up top who's going to continually stretch the Celtic defence and take them the other way. And I actually thought Hamza Gaman should have come on earlier. Now, you would say, okay, but it was Butland's assist for Hamza Gaman's goal. I would say that, and don't get me wrong, Schmeichel had a poor game on the ball too. I would say that kick from Butland, over the course, over 4 or 5 games, it gets you into more trouble than opportunities it creates, right? However, to give Ferguson his credit, what he did, if you look at the minutes leading up to Hamza Gaman's goal, is he went back to 2 up top. He didn't bring a midfielder on to go 5-4-1. He pushed Hadji back to number 10. He pushed Egerman right next up to Dessers. And although there's an element of fortune in how that goal comes about, not the finish, which was excellent, you get your rewards for being aggressive with your substitution. So, slight concern would be that Rangers continue to struggle in their build-up play against pressure, and that is the next coach's biggest task. It's not really games like this. It's like controlling games with the ball, which he's spoken about all season. Yeah. But on the day, Butland did make a couple of big saves too, and he could point to this kick and say, well, there was a lot of moments for my team to bail me out before that. Tavernier should be beaten by Maid at the back post. Probably too easy for Jota to get the cross in on Ridvan. At the end of the day, Rangers got away with one. And similarly, the second goal, I think, proper looks caught in no man's land. But if you look at how Yanis Hadji jumps out, that's maybe the first breakdown in that structure there. So, Celtic got back to 2-2, but I think Ferguson's change to go 2 up top ultimately paid off.
Well done to Barry and the coaching staff, and Rangers going on to seal a good old firm victory. So fantastic analysis as ever. Remember, folks, you can catch videos like this before anyone else if you are a subscriber to the Rangers Review Extra channel. Those of you that are extra members watching this first, then a big thank you as ever for your support to the channel. It's greatly appreciated. A big thank you to Joshua, and thank you to you all for tuning in. Hopefully you enjoyed that, and we'll speak to you a little later on. Bye for now.